before, food Inc. and all the, eating animals and all these other, really controversial and very nation, all these other documentaries. Now this is 2000. People are starting to think about this again, but it's not really kind of the debate that it has become today. So kind of urging people to really think that this isn't natural. What we think is natural isn't. And even the blue ribbon dog in the corner, what kind of dog is that? I mean, I know that's a dog. That's like the really ugly dog, right? Or that's a breed. Like we've created this. When you think of dog shows, and you see all the variety and the specialization, and it's been going on. That's been going on long before the present day. Specializing breeds and manipulating nature, but it's been taken to its extreme in a way that again is rendered monstrous. So here, a painting can be completely activist. I mean, a painting can really cause us to think about what we're doing to our food, our environment, ourselves. A lot of the other projects from this exhibition dealt with gene manipulation and kind of what could happen with technology. This is one of the more famous, famous projects that was featured there in Paradise. Now it's also been featured quite a bit. This is Alba. She's a bunny, and she has. This is a enhanced image. Obviously, this is totally Photoshop, but in real life, this is a albino bunny that contains a protein from crystal jellyfish that is used in science to track traits such as disorders and in genetic research. And what happens is when this protein is triggered, when this gene is triggered, the protein glows under certain conditions. Glows this green color. And so what scientists do is they add this gene to different traits that they're searching for. So there is a legitimate purpose for making things glow in science. But what Eduardo, I want to say Koch, but maybe it's Koch. We'll call him Koch. What Eduardo Koch does with the bunny is takes it out of that research context, and it makes you think of the absurdity of making an animal glow, the absurdity of manipulating the genome of a living creature that didn't ask for this, didn't sign up for it, had no way of providing any kind of consent for it, and again, exposing the fact that I'm all for scientific research. Don't tell me I'm not against scientific research, but when we can do a lot of really bizarre and sometimes horrifying things for scientific advancement and scientific research, and the byproducts of it aren't always pretty. Sometimes they're really funny, like the glowing rabbit, but they're not always. They're not always pretty, and so it's an uneasy relationship that this project has with science and scientific advancement. It's not critical. It's not negative, but it's just saying that we shouldn't. We get excited by the possibilities of genetic research, and we think that this is going to be the key to open up everything. But we also have to think about manipulation that can happen and unintended consequences of it. And this is the bunny in regular light and unphotoshopped. So it doesn't glow like all the time. It's only in certain situations. And there was a whole controversy because he had the bunny created in a lab for him, and he wanted to take it home and have it be part of his family. It was actually going to be like a family pet. I think his daughters were supposed to be playing with it, and the lab would not release it because it was a specially created animal that there's a patent on the process too. There's a lot going on here. So they wouldn't release it at first. And so there was this whole campaign to free Alba and free the bunny and get it home to its family. And it never quite, I don't think it resolved itself really that well. But the statement, again, of this glowing bunny and the absurdity of the glowing family pet, and how does this bizarre transgenic creature then incorporate itself into a family, into a home. This juxtaposition is something that really causes us to think about, again, what is all of this research and manipulation, like how does it, what are the wider implications of it? also about, again, the farm brings up the inevitable comparison to Food Inc. I mean, I talked about how that came later. There's a scene from Food Inc. And again, I'm going to apologize for how bootleg this is, but it brings up a really important point about, actually, I'm probably not going to show, I'm just going to tell you the point because it's easier. So there's a scene in Food Inc. in which, this is a really bad copy, it might just distract you. So there's a scene in Food Inc. that I was going to show that talks about the Monsanto Corporation. So who here has seen Food Inc. and kind of has an idea what I'm going to talk about? No, this is all new information. Excellent. So this is, Monsanto is a massive agricultural corporation. They make pesticides, they make soybeans, they make all kinds of corn. They were the first corporation, this is what Food Inc. talks about, they were the first corporation to be able to patent a living creature. So they patented soybeans. They have their own, so they create Roundup, which is a pesticide, a very effective pesticide. Problem is, it kills the food that you're spraying it on. So what do? They genetically engineer a soybean that can resist Roundup. So they sell you soybean and they sell you pesticide and you've got Roundup ready soybeans. What happens is, because they have a patent on the soybean, on the genetic code of the bean, they can prosecute anybody, not prosecute, but they can sue anybody who is using their soybean without permission. It's like when you download something off the internet you're not supposed to. They can, the record company or whatever could come after you. It's the same kind of idea. It's intellectual property. And so Monsanto has sued. So what happens is soybeans are not, the thing is they don't just stay within the confines of your farm. Sometimes they're blown by the wind, they're dispersed. So what happens is there is genetic crossing between a farm that's legally using Monsanto products and a farm that is trying to live without Monsanto products. And what happens is this is how a lot of farms go out of business because Monsanto will test a crop or have it tested and see, oh, there's a couple of soybeans here that have Monsanto genes in them, therefore we're going to sue you and collect money from you and you're out of business. And this is how these massive farms can buy up land. So it's a very frightening situation, and artists have really addressed the absurdity of being able to kind of patent life and get a copyright on genes, and what this actually means for agriculture and again for property law, intellectual property law in general. So Critical Art Ensemble, you'll recognize them because you analyzed a quote of theirs on your midterm, but you do not actually know about them at the time. Critical Art Ensemble, a group led by, I'm just going to say the leader of the group is a man named Steve Kurtz. I'll show you a picture of him later. And then there's a bunch of other people in Critical Art Ensemble. Ricardo Dominguez, the one who worked with the Zapatistas, remember from week 5, he was a member in the 80s and 90s before he left to form his own group. So that's, again, the connection that you see here. For this, they have a lot of different projects. A very interesting website. I urge you to go and kind of explore it for yourself. This is a project called Molecular Invasion, in which members of Critical Art Ensemble, in collaboration with a bunch of other organizations, they attempted to reverse engineer genetically modified canola, corn, and soy plants that Monsanto had patented. So could they get Monsanto's genes without actually knowing, without having access to like Monsanto's products and their patents? Could they make the Roundup Ready soybeans? And this is about, and it's they actually happened in the gallery, so they were set up. I'll show you an image of how this was set up in the gallery. So you have an art piece, but it's a living biological experiment. And then you bring in this idea of intellectual property and corporations patenting life. It's a huge critique of a system that has allowed this to happen and has allowed. And yes, you can argue that Monsanto put a lot of hard work into this soybean and should have the right to copyright it. But then if Critical Art Ensemble and their collaborators also put in this hard work and they can get the same soybean does that mean they get to copyright it too? So there's kind of a real question at work here, because again, that is a legitimate defense for Monsanto, but if someone else can do it, if someone else can make it, if someone else could do it, if the free market were to swing toward them, would Monsanto be out in the cold? Who knows? The Art Ensemble also had quite a bit of other projects. I really like this one. Remember the Interventionist show you read from their catalog? I hope you all read from their catalog in week, I want to say two, I believe it was, yes, week 2. You read about the Interventionist. This project was featured in the Interventionist. So if you had read through the whole catalog or skimmed through, you would have seen this project called Free Range Grain. And it was, again, live. It took place in the gallery, much like the molecular invasion. It used basic molecular biology to test for genetically modified food. So you could bring this, so ideally, you could bring your food that you bought at the grocery store. It's not labeled in any way because there's no law about how to label it, at least at the time. So you could bring your food and find out if you had genetically modified corn, or if you had genetically modified food. And it's fairly easy to get it to work within the gallery space. And so what happens is they didn't actually get to do this. And they did, in some spaces, you see them doing it here, but by the time they were going for the Interventionists in 2004, 2005 was when the Interventionist exhibition was being held, Steve Kurtz, the leader of CAE, and you can see him here, so this is Steve Kurtz right there, the happy guy. Steve Kurtz was arrested. And so actually that's why when I went to the Interventionist show back when it was actually installed, this whole section was kind of put up. They had a kind of a whole history of this controversy of Steve Kurtz being arrested. Because what happened is, it's a really sad story, his wife died suddenly. He called 911, kind of when the authorities came to, or when the medical personnel came to help resuscitate or revive her, she was not yet dead, I think, at that point, but she died very suddenly. They noticed that there were all this biological equipment in their house, and somebody decided that was really, there's something fishy about that. So they called the authorities. So as his wife died, Steve Kurtz was also arrested for possibly harboring bioterror equipment or weird, he could be making weapons of mass destruction in his home, and you would never know. And so he was actually, the FBI interrogated him. So as he dealt with losing, and his wife was a member of the Critical Art Ensemble. She was a longtime collaborator as well as his wife. So as he dealt with losing his wife, he also had to deal with being interrogated for something that, again, was part of his longtime art practice. Anyone who knew about his work or Critical Art Ensemble would know that they worked with biological materials, genetic testing. This wasn't something that was, he was hiding. He was very open about the type of work he did. And it was clearly not, he was eventually cleared on charges. You can see protesters here gathering to, release him. So he actually could not come to the Interventionist exhibition because he was being held against his will, obviously. But again, all charges were later cleared. The project he was working on at the time was called the Marching Plague, and this is, I'm going to go with irony to describe the situation, but it was actually about bioterror. So the Marching Plague was an examination and an exploration into how germ warfare programs around the world have been implemented, and the culture of fear that allows governments to implement research into germ warfare. So kind of the excuse for creating a germ warfare program in most countries is, well, other countries are making germ warfare programs, so we do too. So there's this threat, you should be afraid. Some terrorist with a suitcase full of anthrax in the middle of the subway. And those little anthrax letter bombs that were mailed in 2001, that really scared people as well. So what Critical Art Ensemble, their point was, and this is very true, is that the government, they're talking critically about the United States, but this is the case in a lot of Western countries. If the government believes that the germ threat is exaggerated, I mean, if they're just doing this to get money, then they're spending way too much money. They're wasting money on these anti-germ warfare programs. But if the danger is real, then there's not enough being done for it. So either way, the response is inadequate. So there is a very real, is there a third one? If there is a very real danger, then we are at risk because we're not being protected. But at the same time, if there's not a danger, our money and our resources are being wasted. This project, it had a lot of different forms: video installation, performance. There was a biological aspect to it as well. And again, this image of releasing kind of this weird gaseous substance. What is that? I mean, it's really just colored red, but it shows, how easily, if someone really did want to conduct germ warfare, it's actually quite easy to do so. So kind of exposing the fallacies and the flaws and the inherent contradictions in specifically U.S. policy for germ warfare. And again, I'll give you that quote again because I think it's worth thinking about. So this is the one you analyzed. Treading water in the pool of liquid power not be an image of acquiescence and complicity. In spite of their awkward situation, the political activist and the cultural activist, anachronistically known as the artist, can still produce disturbances, although such action may more closely resemble the gestures of a drowning person, and it is uncertain just what is being disturbed. In this situation, the role of the face favors the act of disturbance. And a lot of you did a great job analyzing this quote. I was so happy with a lot of your responses to it, believe me. I was very pleased. What I didn't tell you on the exam, and what I'm going to tell you now, is that Critical Art Ensemble's manifestos and their work is also a part of their art. So this quote itself is, so every single thing they write, you can actually get their books from the library here, and they have them all. They're these little tiny books, and all the quotes are rewrites or references to other texts. So it's supposed to be read as a series of hypertexts, but actually in paper form. It'd be nice if someday they would actually publish it in an ebook form and actually be able to link to everything it's referencing. I think that would be interesting. But part of the game is trying to figure out where all these come from. This quote comes from a poem, which I'm here to depress you. It's called Not Waving but Drowning. And it's by the modern poet Stevie Smith, who was from the UK. And this was written in 1957. So, nobody heard him, the dead man, but he still lay moaning. I was much further out than you thought, and not waving, but drowning. Poor chap, he always loved larking, and now he's dead. It must have been too cold for him, his heart gave way, they said. Oh, no, 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 it was too cold always. Still the dead one lay moaning. I was much too far out all my life, and not waving, but drowning. So, if we think about what they're saying about this actions of a drowning man and how this is still the postmodern roll of the dice favors this, we think about it as a rewrite of this text, this poem about not waving but drowning, of going too far out. So it's almost a warning. So yes, you're treading water in the pool of liquid power, but maybe you're too far out. Maybe you've gone too far, and it doesn't matter what disturbance you create, but you're too far gone. You're already dead. So, and now, again, this was written in '94. The controversy with Steve Kurtz happened 10 years later. But think about how far out he was willing to go, kind of, and ended up being arrested, held for quite some time against his will, under suspicion because of his actions, his desire to create a disturbance. Obviously, it worked out well for him. Relatively well for him. I won't sugarcoat it. Relatively well for him. It worked out, as in he was cleared. He's able. He continues to do his work today. But it's always interesting. We read this optimistically the first time. That yes, there's still a point in creating disturbances. but you have to think about the drowning person, what that's referring to, and how far out do you go before you're already gone. Just to press you more, I guess. And now to just target your heartstrings, because when I say I don't have any real narratives to this lecture, I did pick up on one thing, and the polar bear and the tiny little animals were part of it, but this idea of empathy, and how environmental and bioactivist artists, they seek to create, I think, some of the more successful, or some of the more, I guess, emotive projects manage to create empathy in the viewer, and they anthropomorphize. Think of the little animals wearing clothes. They're anthropomorphized. They're like little Disney animals or little Pixar creatures because they're wearing little clothes. Think about trash. I actually it's very sad. The text I assigned to you today is from it's a catalog called Trash, and they do talk about these sad chairs. So hopefully this should not be new to any of you because you all did the reading today, I hope. So the sad chair. So Bill Keegy is a photographer who takes pictures of trash, of abandoned, discarded objects, and he started to realize that there was a real preponderance of chairs on the side of the road. Think of like couches. I mean, whenever I walk by all the fraternities near the St. George campus, it's like there's a couch here, there's a mattress there. It's like, what are these people doing? But there's chairs. And we talked about chairs. Did I get to that the other day? Well, we're talking, chairs are a symbol of absence. So we talked about the bicycles. I didn't get to the chairs the other day because we ran out of time. But remember the bicycles. The disappeared people, bicycles were spray painted onto the side of and they were symbolizing absence. Chairs are also a way to symbolize absence. And an abandoned chair has this level of pathos to the situation. So this is, of course, even super anthropomorphized. It's got the little, like, sad, not, glum expression, and it's got its little eyes almost. Here's another sad chair. There's so many of them. There's whole books of the sad chairs. So again, it was occupied. It supported a person. It was comfortable. It was, it could have been a favorite armchair, and now it's been unceremoniously abandoned. The most famous example of this to me growing up was, the movie came out long before I was born, but there was a movie that I remember when I was a kid called The Brave Little Toaster. Oh. Wow. Have you guys seen The Brave Little Toaster? Yes. Okay, so I'm like, so think about The Brave Little Toaster. That movie made such an impression on me when I was a kid, and I thought that we could not throw away any of our household appliances because, oh my God, they would be abandoned, and they would have to undertake a journey to come and see us. And that whole, there's a scene in the junkyard where the cars are singing about the life that they had. So again, the sad chairs are really tapping into that. We have cultural references, and even like today, I think Toy Story 3 that came out with the toys and their emotions and kind of how they resign themselves to death in the incinerator. But anyway, I won't spoil it if you didn't see it. And so again, this attachment we can build to inanimate objects is really quite amazing. That we can do that, and these projects exploit that. This one's not really as heart-rendering as the sad chairs, but this is called Free Paper, and I met Lawrence, Free Paper, 2009. Free Paper really gets at the volume of junk mail. Think of, who has a mailbox? I think we all kind of receive mail. Has anyone received mail that isn't junk? Like, seriously, you do. I received bank statements, even though I've said paperless statements about 10,000 times. TD Canada Trust continues to send me little paper statements. But other than that, it's all catalogs, it's advertisements. During political season, it's whole flyers and brochures. So what she did was, this artist, she collected junk mail, and she almost creates these, to me, they kind of look like layers of sediment. They almost appear, they appear natural. But when you also see the volume of paper, so this is all unwanted paper. And then the title, Free Paper, paper kind of has a dual meaning. So it's free paper. It was paper you received without paying for it, but also free paper. Like, let's free this paper. Free this paper to do something else besides the unwanted junk mail, a nuisance, an inconvenience. And when we think about it, I mean, the volume of paper we use, and they're kind of beautiful too. I mean, she's now freed them to be something else. They have a new potential. They're art projects. They're beautiful. They're stratified. You almost feel like you could, dig down into the core and really get a sample of something, like they do with Antarctic ice. So there's, repurposing something in a way that we wouldn't really think about it. So now I'm going to leave you with a film. I won't be able to show you the whole thing because it will actually go over. How many of you have seen the film Plastic Bag? Or have heard of the film Plastic? Oh, okay, I have a couple here. This to me is the ultimate example of empathy. So I'm going to give you, So I'm going to give you kind of a little synopsis of it because you won't get to see the whole thing, but it's all available for free online. In this film, there's a plastic bag, and it's voiced in this, kind of voiceover narration by the German director Werner Herzog, who was the man who directed Grizzly Man and Encounters at the End of the World, and all those sorts of films. And he's kind of crazy, but a genius, and I mean, he's a nut. So it's perfect that he lends his voice to this plastic bag. And the plastic bag is going through an existential crisis. It's trying to find its creator. It has questions for its creator, its maker. And it goes through this journey. And because you won't see the last bit, the very last line. So it goes and it kind of travels through this depopulated landscape because people have all seemingly died out. And by the time the plastic bag gets to the end of its journey, it goes to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and it swims around with its kind, but it isn't satisfied. It needs to find out, it has these burning questions. And at the very end, the last line is, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it's, if I could meet my maker, if I could meet her one more time, I would ask her, why didn't you make me so that I could die? And this kind of, this sad life of the immortal plastic bag. So I'm just going to go ahead and play it, and we'll stop.